Welcome back. A key vote on Obamacare tax credits set for next week, but a bombshell new report from the Government Accountability Office uncovers widespread fraud surrounding the ACA advanced premium tax credit subsidies. Federal exchanges reportedly approved fake beneficiaries, and they paid them the premium subsidies. In 2023, 58,000 people who were dead were still receiving payments up to $21 billion. They're going to overpayments or ineligible enrollees. 29,000 cases involve the same Social Security number used in multiple subsidized plans. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, one of the lawmakers who formally requested this investigation, will join me in the 8 a.m. hour with more details on that, as well as the subpoena that he sent for Jack Smith. But first, let's talk with Kentucky Congressman Andy Barr, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining here. What can you tell us about any conversation underway about Obamacare subsidies as they are set to expire at year end?
Well, Maria, President Trump and Republicans are for lowering the cost of health care, and we always have. But the central irony of the government shutdown we just went through is that it was largely motivated by a Democrat temper tantrum over the failure of Obamacare. It was a breathtaking admission by Democrats that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is in fact unaffordable. And I'm concerned about just simply continuing to mask the true cost of Obamacare with more subsidies that just simply subsidize premium inflation. If you look at the subsidies, if you look at the premiums in the exchanges, in the Obamacare exchanges, those premiums for Americans in the exchanges have risen over 60% faster, higher than premiums in the employer-sponsored system. So Obamacare doesn't work, and subsidizing that broken system is not the answer. And as you pointed out, we've found through studies that the subsidies in the exchanges are rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. One study says that $47 billion of improper payments with these subsidies. So we need to move to a patient-centered reform system that harnesses the power of competition and choice and gives power back to patients and forces more competition in the system. That will lower the cost of health care.
Well, how significant is that fraud related to these Obamacare exchanges?
Well, it's very significant. Really? According to the study, I mean, billions of dollars, $47 billion of improper payments as a result of these subsidies. There's no verification of eligibility in the way the system is set up. So at minimum, if we're going to renew any of these subsidies or enhance subsidies, we need major reforms to ensure that the American taxpayer is protected.
Let me switch gears, ask you about foreign policy for a moment, Congressman, because U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are expected to meet with Ukrainian officials in Miami after a marathon 5-hour meeting yesterday with Vladimir Putin. It did not yield any major breakthroughs yesterday, but President Trump says Putin still wants to make a deal. Watch this.
Their impression was that he would like to see the war ended. I think he'd like to get back to dealing a more normal life. I think he'd like to be trading with the United States of America, frankly, instead of, losing thousands of soldiers a week.
Congressman, your thoughts?
Well, if anyone can get to peace, if anyone can negotiate a peace deal, it's President Trump. Putin invaded Ukraine under Joe Biden's watch, and this would have never happened if President Trump's peace through strength strategy had been in place. Weakness invites aggression, and that's what Joe Biden's policies did. The chaotic retreat from Afghanistan, the unilateral pullback on the sanctions on Nord Stream 2, the pipeline, all of that invited Putin's invasion. What President Trump is showing is strength, and he's putting Ukraine and the Europeans in a position to negotiate a lasting and durable peace by closing the energy loophole in the sanctions, by helping NATO get to 5% GDP on their defense spending, negotiating this deal on critical minerals in Ukraine, which would actually restore a significant level of deterrence. All of those measures, and by the way, denuclearizing Iran, taking action in Iran, believe me, Putin took notice of that. And all of those measures put President Trump in a position to negotiate a lasting peace And if anyone can do it, President Trump can do it.
Well, we're certainly watching how this plays out, and the president has been focused on peace deals. I mean, this would be enormous if, in fact, we saw him actually help to end this war. But it doesn't feel like Putin really wants to end this.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't, and his demands are unreasonable, asking for major territorial concessions that are larger than even what Russia controls right now, and including the entirety of the Donbass. I think what looks like peace would be a demilitarization of the Donbass.
Yeah.
And also security guarantees for Ukraine, obviously. That is critically important. But President Trump is, through a restoration of peace through strength and through a restoration of deterrence, he's putting the Europeans and the Ukrainians in a position where they can actually achieve long-term and lasting peace. And again, if anyone can do it, President Trump can.
Congressman, your committee, the House Financial Services Committee, issued a 53-page final staff report on how the Biden administration debanked digital assets. I want to get your take on this. And I spoke with the House Financial Services Committee Chairman, French Hill, about it yesterday. Here's what he told us. Watch.
This report identifies all the ways led by Gary Gensler, who was chairman of the SEC, the bank supervisors led by Michael Barr, then vice chairman of the Fed, and others, to systematically debank legal businesses in the United States engaged in the digital asset innovative space. And this was terrible for American competitiveness, and it led me during the course of the Biden administration to offer my FIT 21 bill, which is now the Clarity Act, which gives the rules of the road, clear market structure road rules, so that people know how to innovate. They can count on the federal government for not debanking them and actually encouraging the use of innovation blockchain technology inside financial services.
But why would the administration, the Biden administration, want to de-emphasize this?
Well, I think they took the same approach that the Obama administration is, that when they, in their privileged point of view, believes that somehow that this innovation is a bad thing, they wanted to see it blocked from access to the financial system.
Congressman, your reaction, and how do you see this playing out in the coming years?
Well, President Trump and I and Chairman Hill and Congressman Huizenga and others on the House Financial Services Committee and Chairman Tim Scott of South Carolina, we're working together to end the weaponization of finance in America. No American individual or business should be debanked because of their political or religious views or because of the lawful business that they're engaged in. Yes, crypto has been discriminated against by the Biden administration, Gary Gensler and others. But now we have a new sheriff in town, President Trump, his bank regulators, Jonathan Gould, Michelle Bowman, Travis Hill, and we are ending the practice of debanking, not just crypto, but also firearms, fossil energy, and other lawful businesses. This is progress.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible that the industries they didn't like, they basically weaponized the agencies against them. Congressman, we're going to keep watching all of that. Thanks so much for being here. Andy Barr joining us. All right, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back.